This conference will now be recorded.
Nice.
Cool. So the first awkward moment is done. Hello, welcome everyone to our living room. We are currently in Barcelona, and we are planning to present you today around the world with coffee, because we know that many of us, we can't travel right now, and we thought it would be a cool experience to share our memories and experience from different travels that we did across the world. And we visited a lot of coffee plantations and learned a lot about the coffee culture in these countries. So basically, before we actually kick in and we'll start our event officially, we would like to do a little bit of exercise with you. We prepared some really cool questions that can get yourself familiar with the topic that we are going to talk about. And across the whole event, we are going to basically use a tool, online tool, for you to ask questions. You don't need to download anything to your phone or computer. You simply open your browser and you go to slido.com. I also put the description into the chat.
Yeah.
And you can ask your questions, and we'll do a little bit of a quiz together at the beginning. Before we do that, I actually realized we didn't introduce ourselves for those of you who are here for the first time. My name is Lydia.
And my name is Velizar.
And we realized together during the coronavirus crisis, when we were at home and we had a little bit of time to think about things, that we know actually too much about coffee to keep it to ourselves. And that's why we thought it would be cool to share it with you. So yeah, let's go ahead. And this is the instructions that I was talking about. You just need to go to slido.com, enter this code.
C4F3. So they told us you should come up with some kind of code that is both letters and numbers. And this is basically showing cafe or cafe, if you like. So C4F3 on slido.com. And this will allow you to participate in all the polls and all the questions.
Cool. So let's have a look. Oops, somebody is unmuted. I'll just mute you all, everyone. Yeah, for the sake, so the event is nice for everyone. We decided that you are guys going to be muted, but at the end you can ask questions, and also you can submit them into Slido. So I'm doing it actually with you. I just went on my phone to slido.com and I'm entering C4F3 as a code. And you can see there on the screen that you can ask questions. And if you click on polls, you should be able to see the quiz in a little bit. So here we go, join the quiz. Great, I see that we have people joining. It works. And we go to the first question. You have 25 seconds to respond. What's the name of our coffee in Ethiopia? That's one of the countries we're going to talk about today. So choose your answer.
Buna, Guna, Henna, or Luna.
And you have 10 seconds to do that, 10 more seconds.
We don't expect you to know that, guys. It's just for fun.
Yeah. Okay, so here we got the answers, and the correct answer is actually Buna.
Buna. I'm surprised that actually a lot of people know that. Yeah.
Okay, let's go for the second one. There's still some people who responded Luna. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, next country, Vietnam. Besides coffee, what's in almost all coffee cocktails in Vietnam? And your options are rum, whiskey, condensed milk, or tonic.
The answer is more obvious than you think.
Okay, 3 more seconds to answer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Most of you answered correctly. So what's the name of the fictional character that was used to popularize Colombian coffee in the world? Speedy Gonzalez, Antonio Banderas, George Clooney, or Juan Valdez? So 5 more seconds, and then we're going to go to the last question because we don't want to use your time just to answer questions. Nice. Somebody answered Antonio Banderas. That's In which European country you can actually grow coffee? Germany, Italy, Spain, or Greece? We're talking about growing coffee, guys, not roasting it. Roasting you can do in everywhere.
With the oven or popcorn or popcorn machine.
And
the voting is closed. Okay,
wow.
A lot of people answered Greece, but actually it is Spain or Spanish island in Canarias. So yeah, that's the correct answer. Cool. So Yanka, congratulations, you're the winner. And okay, we have also Saleh on the second place and Alejo. I was responding on purpose incorrectly, so I gave a chance to someone else. It would be weird if I win my own contest. Cool. That was the quiz part, and now let's go to the agenda of our event. Across the event, as I mentioned, feel free to submit your questions through the phone. We'll answer them at the end. And I'm really happy that for this part, we're kicking off with Colombia. We're kicking off strong because we have a special guest today, Alejo. Before I introduce him, we'll tell you a little bit about our travel in Colombia that we did with Velizar. Mm-hmm. We'll also talk about Ethiopia and Vietnam.
Vietnam, we're going to end up with Vietnam. Now, as you can see on your screens, we see all the countries we will talk about today. So Colombia, Ethiopia, and Vietnam. The first thing that you notice actually is that they're all on a similar latitude. And that's no coincidence. That's no coincidence because here we're talking about the so-called coffee bean belt. The coffee bean belt is here. So all the places that you can grow coffee in South and Central America, in Africa, Asia, and even parts of Australia. It's called like that because this is exactly corresponding to the weather and soil conditions of where coffee can be grown. Now, let's start off with Colombia. So Colombia, what I can tell you about Colombia, whatever I tell you about Colombia is not going to be enough because the world of coffee would not have been the same without this wonderful country. And what I mean by that is like Colombians at the beginning, they didn't think that coffee can be something interesting for them to grow. So it was grown there quite late in the 18th century. Before that, cultures like tobacco or quinine, which is a medicine, was grown because it had very good margins. But then Colombia started growing coffee and became a superpower in the coffee world. So the biggest contribution of Colombia in the world came in mid 20th century. And it came from a country that is a bit north of Colombia, and that's the United States of America. So what happened is Colombia created this kind of series of commercials that was intending to popularize Colombian coffee in the US and then into the world. How did that happen? It was very, very simple. Before that, believe it or not, in America, they were drinking coffee out of a can. So this coffee was neither delicious, neither appetizing, and I couldn't believe that somebody can drink from a can. But what Colombia did, they created this fictional character called Juan Valdez. It's a farmer that was going through Colombian coffee fields with his mule, and he was showing that actually coffee is a plant. Coffee can be delicious. And afterwards, Colombian coffee had a stamp of a very good quality product throughout the US. And basically, Juan Valdez taught Americans how to drink coffee.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The plantations that we visited in Colombia are in the so-called Coffee Triangle, and this place is also very, very famous for huge palm trees. It's called Cocora Valley. So definitely, if you're visiting Colombia sometimes in the future, we recommend to visit this place because it's not only famous for coffee, but there are beautiful hikes. You can spend some amazing time in the nature there. And the views, I mean, stunning like this. And the experience from the coffee fields in Colombia, I would compare it probably to visiting very famous vineyards in Bordeaux, or around in France, where everything is super well organized, and it's so easy just to grab a bike or your car and to hop on from farm to farm to talk to the local farmers. They also show you how they grow coffee. They explain you the whole process, how they, for example, dry coffee. You can taste it. You can buy your own bag for obviously very, very good price. So the experience in Colombia was, probably one of the best in the world, as coffee farms in comparison to wine are predominantly in third world countries. And later on, when we show you actually our pictures from Ethiopia, people are sometimes, or the farmers or the owners of the farms are sometimes thinking, like, what would people like to see here? There is nothing to see. For them, it's just a normal life. It's just a work. However, in Colombia, it was extremely well organized, and we learned a lot, and we had a great experience talking to the local people. So those are the farms. They grow, as you see, the coffee trees are growing on steep hills, which means that the Colombian coffee generally is grown higher in comparison to other regions, which obviously has impact on the taste of the coffee. In the high latitudes, very complex sugars are being created in the coffee, and that gives a very nice acidity and sweetness to the coffee. So yeah, this is Velizar on the bike. As you see, we rented some bikes and we were driving in between the coffee farms all day. This is a picture of a cacao. As you can imagine, the conditions for growing coffee and cacao are very similar. And here, the same way as coffee is a fruit, cacao is a fruit as well. And this is how they dry it, and they basically, a process of fermentation is happening there.
It's very similar to coffee, actually. The whole process is very similar to coffee.
And now it's time, actually, to introduce our very special guest, Alejo. Alejo is a friend of ours, and he is from Colombia. And we would like to share with you experiences from a Colombian perspective, how a person coming from this country takes coffee. So hi, Alejo, good to have you with us.
Hey guys, how's it going? Glad to be here. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
We hear you very well.
Okay, great.
So Alejo, welcome to our event, and we know that you're a big coffee lover as well. And I would like to know what's making Colombian coffee so special.
Okay, now that's a very good question. So, I mean, I'm no expert. Like, I do love coffee, so my answers are just gonna be from my own experience living in Colombia and growing in Colombia. So I probably would say that there's three different factors, if you may call them like that. First, the one you've been talking about, location, right? Location, location, location. I mean, the fact that Colombia is in this in the tropical, we've got the right balance of a mild weather with enough rain, enough sun. So as you were mentioning before, we have this specific region in Colombia where we're growing most of the coffee. So this is at a very high altitude. So you're getting the right temperature, the right shade. So it's not too much sun, not too much water, rain. So I think that combination is just perfect for the coffee to grow there. On the other hand, I think unlike other countries, like our harvesting process is not very industrialized. It's actually done by hand, which is actually a good thing because as farmers, they go into the fields, as you were seeing in the picture. You have these very steep mountains, right? So it's very hard to get machinery and automate the whole process. And that's actually a great thing because they can actually pick the right beans of coffee, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if they're green, they're not gonna pick them up. If they're ripe and they're perfect for to start the whole process, then they're gonna of course pick them up. So I think that's a great advantage. And the last one is you guys also mentioned this in the first webinar, the different types of like Arabica coffee versus Robusta. And actually in Colombia, as far as I know, we only grow Arabica. And
Mm-hmm.
Arabica, as some of you guys here may also know, is one of the like the best types of coffee, right? In comparison to Robusta. So we're also growing like one of the best beans, right, that you can grow in terms of coffee. So that mix of all these factors make it, I guess, ideal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. And actually, we are going to go back to Robusta when we are on the Vietnam part because that's the country that
Yeah.
actually Robusta. Yeah, and
So
the
yeah,
chirping as well. A lot of farms that we visited, they were really like priding themselves in the fact that they're picking by hand the best cherries.
exactly, exactly. Because I guess that's also the way it works with wine. I'm not sure. Like they also harvest it by hand. So I guess that's a big quality factor. Yeah.
Yeah, quality control, definitely. And how do people in Colombia at home drink coffee?
Okay, so that's quite funny, right? Because I guess in Europe, probably people are more used to espresso because of the Italians, I guess. But in Colombia, we actually drink more filter coffee.
Uh-huh.
So that's a picture in the middle that you can see in the slide. We actually, instead of using modern filters, we're using this very authentic. We call it the sock. You know, it looks like a sock that you can wear. It's made out of cloth, so it's actually very environmentally friendly, I guess. And you can make a tinto or a filter coffee. So we call tinto our filter coffee. So basically, you use the sock. You know, you use this filter, this cloth filter. You put your grinded coffee and pour the water, hot water, and then you have your coffee yourself. That's the way I remember my parents would do their own coffee, or my grandparents would do their own coffee as I was growing up. Of course, now with modern times, you probably will just buy yourself the classic coffee machine, you know, like the American coffee machine, but you can still find places where they use this method.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what about the coffee places? Actually, when people go out to drink coffee, I remember that when we were in Colombia, that you would need to, if you wanted like an equivalent to espresso or single coffee, you would need to ask for cafe tinto, right?
You mentioned that, yeah. You,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like we don't have as many varieties, I guess, as in Italy, where you have like doppio and ristretto and all of this. It's either tinto, right, or café con leche, like coffee with milk. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
maybe now you'll get more like cappuccino and things like that, but it will definitely be very like at a basic level. Like we wouldn't people would go by default to the tinto, as you said. Yeah.
And why? Well, because I remember that it was almost impossible to get coffee without sugar in Colombia. It's always served with sugar.
I
How is it?
know, I know. Yeah, I know. I'm not very proud of that, right? Because with specialty coffee, especially like you wanna taste the actual coffee, but it is super common. It is super common. If you go to a restaurant or if you go to a coffee shop, you're gonna have your coffee with either sugar or
Mhm.
panela. Panela is like also like a secondary outcome of the sugar cane process, so it's also very very sweet. And I guess the reason we use sugar, I mean, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, one is more cultural. I guess we're just used to it. That's the way we grew up having more like a sweeter. We like the sweeter taste of our coffee, which is too bad. But on the other hand, it also has to do with the quality of coffee that the average Colombian will have access to, right? So let me just give you more details on that. Most of the high quality coffee is exported. You could say we're producing one of the best coffees in the world, but Colombians are not the one drinking it, right? Like it doesn't stay in the country, or most of it's exported, as you were saying, to the States or to Europe. Um, and also the fact that a specialty coffee is going to be more expensive, it doesn't make it very accessible to the average Colombian. So in the end, you're going to have roasters who are just probably taking not the best coffee, right? Like the worst coffee that is being produced, and that's the actual coffee that is being sold, to the restaurants, or that is being sold at the grocery store. So it's not the best coffee, right? So that's why you would add sugar just to make it taste better, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I remember as well. That actually you keep the good coffee for export, and inside the country you keep not the bad coffee, but okay, lower quality.
Yeah.
And
What I do want to add is that this is, I guess, slowly changing. Like I think, as in any, like in different parts of the world, we're starting to drink better coffee, and
mhm.
that's also happening in Colombia. Myself, like, I was just used to regular coffee, and probably if I go back, I don't know, like 7 or 8 years ago, you started seeing some coffee shops with specialty coffee, with local specialty coffee, right? Like directly from the farmer or with a local roaster. So that's definitely getting a lot more popular. And luckily, we now can have access to our own best coffee in Colombia. Yeah. So that's
Mhm.
improving.
And what about specifically Cali? Because we know that you're from Cali, and Cali is very famous for salsa dancing. How is coffee culture actually in your city?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it's funny because Cali is actually super hot. Like it's a all year long summer, so it's always above 30 Celsius degrees. So it's a pretty hot city, and probably you're guessing that because it's a hot weather, we wouldn't drink coffee, but we don't care, I guess. Like, my mom, she loves having her coffee in the morning. Like my parents, they will wake up and have their coffee. Is the way to kick off their day. Actually, if my mom doesn't have any coffee, she needs her coffee. Let's just say that she needs her coffee. Yeah. No, it's super popular beverage. You can have it all around, and usually, in the afternoon. So that's a picture of Cali, actually, the picture on the right.
Mhm.
So this is a shopping center with a Juan Valdez. So yeah, you would go out, have a walk, after work, grab a cup of cappuccino with some cake, and enjoy your coffee. So yeah,
Cool.
just as
Cool.
a, just as any part of Colombia, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And the last question before we go to Ethiopia is actually, how do you drink your coffee now?
Okay, that's a good one. So we have a Chemex here in our house. We love the balance that the Chemex method gives us. So it's filter coffee, right? It's filter coffee with paper filters, and I'm very biased, so I really like Colombian coffee. I really like
Oh,
buying
wonderful.
specialty Colombian coffee. But we also, I mean, I would say like South American coffee, like or Latin American coffee, like we really like it because it's very balanced. It has a lot of sweet notes, like sometimes you've got some caramel or sugar cane or even chocolate. So we like it. We like it here at home. So that's usually what we buy versus Asian or African coffee. So yeah, we try, I guess, to keep it more local. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good promotion for Colombian coffee.
Drink Colombian coffee. Drink Colombian coffee.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much, Alejo, for your time and for joining us. We'll keep you with us a little bit longer for the end. Guys who you are watching us, you can ask questions to Alejo. He'll be here and we'll be happy to answer them at the end. And now let's travel to another continent, and we find ourselves in Ethiopia.
Yeah, we find ourselves in Africa, more specifically in Ethiopia. Now, why is Ethiopia important? Ethiopia is really, really interesting because it's the birthplace of coffee. Now, legend has it that in the 9th century, this monk slash goat herder discovered coffee. How did he discover the coffee? It was not a human being that discovered the coffee, it was a goat. So he noticed that his goats are eating the coffee plant, and then they were not sleeping, they were hyperactive all day, all night. And then he decided to make a delicious drink out of it, of course, and that was the beginning of coffee drinking in the world. Yes, but no, that was just a legend. Actually, Ethiopia is indeed the birthplace of coffee, and more specifically of coffee Arabica. As Alejo mentioned, Arabica is one variety and Robusta is another. And at the beginning, curiously enough, people were not drinking coffee. So they were again taking the coffee beans, also known as the coffee seeds, they were roasting them, and then they were mixing them with animal fat. They were making this kind of like energy balls. And this doesn't sound really, really appetizing, but in fact, a lot of people were eating those in the morning so they can have energy throughout the day, and they were feeling generally more happy. So that being said, afterwards they discovered that they can actually drink it. They don't have to go through the animal fat thing.
Okay, great. Well, now that you know how people used to do that, I'm showing you now a picture how actually coffee is processed in Colombia. So due to the fact that Ethiopia doesn't have really a lot of resources of water, they actually cannot wash the fruit from the bean as they do it in Colombia. But they actually dry the coffee bean with the cherry, which means that also this has influence on the taste of Ethiopian coffee. It's a process of fermentation, and again, the bean is taking a lot of fruity notes, a lot of like nice, those juicy kind of flavors from the cherry. So when you find yourselves in a coffee shop where you can see coffees from all around the world, Alejo would definitely tell you choose Colombian. And my advice would be probably if you're not sure what you want, Ethiopia would be probably a safe choice in case you have not developed that kind of extravagant flavor palette taste for coffee. So most of the time, Ethiopia is that kind of coffee that can that a lot of most of the people or masses would really like coffee from Ethiopia. So that's the standard coffee taste that we have saved in our brains. And when we were walking in Ethiopia, in the streets, you would see a lot of coffee places that look exactly like that. So normally the lady would be a little bit more impressed that is serving you coffee than on this picture. Yeah, would be happier. Probably she was not very happy I was taking a picture of her. But basically, this is a regular coffee place in Ethiopia. It's a table where you have nicely lined up mugs and these containers full of coffee. So even if you, for example, look into TripAdvisor or you're trying to find really famous coffee place, a lot of times they would direct you here, and it would be literally on the street. It's not coffee place like in our heads where you actually enter and you sit down and you enjoy a coffee with your friends.
Yeah, basically it's like we saw the most famous coffee house, I quote, coffee house in the town, and according to Google Maps it was a coffee house, and at the end we just saw a table, a few chairs around it, and a lady that was pouring coffee. So that was the coffee house. Now let's talk about a little bit about the coffee ceremony. Now, the Ethiopians, they really like coffee. So they drink a lot of coffee. On one sitting, an average Ethiopian will drink 3 cups of coffee. That's only on one sitting. Now, the coffee ceremony is called ceremony because we're gonna tell you why. But basically, it takes about an hour. And how we know it takes about an hour? It's because we have done it all. So we have done it from the beginning, which is like we made fire, right? We made fire. We're not talking about electricity here. We made fire. We washed the green coffee in water, not because it's dirty, but because we need to get rid of some of the substances. Then, as you can see here, we roasted the coffee on a pan. And after that, we were grinding it.
That was a lot of work.
That was tons of work, guys. It looks really easy, but you burn a lot of calories just grinding the coffee in this, let's say, not modern way. And of course, then we brew the coffee in this beautiful clay pot, which is a traditional Ethiopian clay pot. Typically, the brew times is, they typically brew it 3 times. And each time they just add more water. And curiously enough, they put a little bit of salt. So that was really interesting for me that they put a little bit of salt while brewing the coffee. And of course, the third brew is the weakest one because they don't change the coffee, they just change the water. And at the end, it is served, so it can be consumed by the people who want it. Again, we're in the role of people that are serving the coffee, and then you enjoy it. Now, it was interesting that for our hosts, the Ethiopians that saw us doing this, they had never seen foreigners performing the coffee ceremony before. And moreover, they had never seen a man performing the coffee ceremony because this is, I quote, the woman's job. But then again, on the market, we saw men sewing clothes, which is supposed to be the men's job. So there's definitely a difference in roles in different societies. And now, once we have the coffee, a typical Ethiopian will put a bit of sugar in it, will talk to his companions, and then they will eat it with, they will drink it with popcorn. That was very, very curious for us because Ethiopia is not a rich country. So very rarely you're gonna see something like chocolate cakes or something like biscuit. It will typically come with the popcorn. And actually we tried it and we really liked it, no?
Yeah, it was interesting. Basically, they use the same pan as for roasting the coffee.
They use the exact same pan. Yeah, maybe this is how the idea came. And now, why is it called ceremony? Because it takes a long time. And also a very interesting aspect with which I'm going to finish is that they use incense.
Yeah.
They use incense. What was the name of this incense?
Franciscan.
Franciscan. So if you guys have been to a church ever, and you know how the church smells, so they have this kind of incense in the air around the coffee. It was to repel evil spirits. But I really liked it because I felt much secure, much better about myself by drinking coffee without the presence of evil spirits, you know.
Well, so, yeah. It definitely feels like you're doing a certain ceremony throughout the day when you have to go through so many steps and so many procedures are involved. You definitely have a feeling that you're a part of something special.
Yeah.
And in Ethiopia, this is the picture.
This is the picture of what I was talking about. So sewing clothes is the men's job. Well, serving coffee is the woman's job.
Exactly. And here we are on a farm in Ethiopia. We visited a coffee farm near city Harar, which is basically southeastern part of Ethiopia, and it's one of the oldest cities in the country. And if you ask a regular Ethiopian on the street where is the best coffee coming from, they would tell you that it's from Harar. So that's why we visited the coffee there. And it was, despite the fact that it was not really suggested because there were some political problems at the moment, some political.
It was very unstable, yeah.
Yeah, but we were lucky because we found a guide and he found us a transportation to take us to a local farm, a very small one. And again, the experience compared to Colombia was very different. You can see that the coffee trees are not nicely cut and shaped into into a line. The coffee tree behind us is quite big. That's very unusual. Usually they don't let them grow that big. And it's been also for them a little bit strange that we wanted to go and visit the coffee farm. They didn't kind of understand what we want to do there, or why it might be interesting for us. But in the end, it was very authentic and a nice experience. We spent a morning with the family who owns the farm, and they served us very interesting tea that was made of coffee skin. Well, basically the thing that you would wash the beans from. In other countries they would throw it away or use it for compost. However, in Ethiopia, they actually made they roast it on a pan, and they make a very
that's the thing you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm talking about. So as in Colombia, the coffee is mainly used for export. In Ethiopia, more around half of the production is actually consumed by the country itself. So it's not something what they export it, but they also keep good coffee in the country. And more interestingly, in this specific region, Harar, the conditions are also very good for growing chat, which is a mild narcotic.
Yeah.
And the advantage of chat is that they can harvest it 5 times per year in comparison to coffee that can be harvested 2 times per year. So the farmers look at it from very short-term perspective, and rather they're converting a lot of coffee farms into chat farms, because Harar became a place that is exporting this mild narcotic to
other countries. But also it's very cheap to find this mild narcotic. The results, the effect on a human is like a marijuana, but it's really, really cheap and it's consumed locally. Immediately they can see the money from selling chat in their pockets, but they cannot see the same for coffee. So it's not that we're blaming the farmers or anything, because they need to make sure that they're getting the best out of it. But of course, coffee is a lot more profitable, but in the long term, so you need investment for
that. Okay, so let's travel again in your head, and the
last country. Yeah,
we position ourselves in Vietnam.
The last country. So why is Vietnam important to be mentioned? Well, after Brazil, is the second largest producer of coffee in the entire world. So that being said, Vietnamese were not very interested in coffee up until the moment they saw when Vietnam was under the French rule. They saw that the higher classes, the elite of the French society, is sipping on coffee in the morning, for lunch, even in the afternoon, and they were all looking so happy. So Vietnamese, being entrepreneurial by nature, said, okay, maybe we can take advantage of this. And what happened? What happened is that at some point, Vietnam decided that they have the right conditions, the weather conditions, the right soil to have coffee, but it wasn't for Arabica, it was actually for Robusta. So 97% of all Vietnamese production is Robusta coffee. It's something that Alejo mentioned earlier on. So Colombia is predominantly Arabica, Ethiopia is predominantly Arabica, but in Vietnam, they make Robusta coffee. How is Robusta coffee different? Well, for beginning, it's a very, very condensed, very rich, very, very full body coffee, which is also super, super bitter. And it has twice as much caffeine as Arabica. So if you're not a fan of very strong coffees, I would suggest you stick to Arabica, unless you want to try something new. But pay attention on the quantities of coffee, because it can get you really heart palpitations quite fast. Of course, there are certain countries like Russia, for example, I know for sure they prefer Robusta coffee because they believe that coffee should be bitter, coffee should be strong, and coffee should be condensed in a way. Now, Vietnamese, how they make their coffee, just like in Ethiopia, they grind it after roasting, and they consume it immediately after roasting. But the thing of the matter is that they use this kind of like a special Vietnamese filter, And with this Vietnamese filter, it drops, so the filtration is done in a very, very slow way, and at the end you can enjoy it. But again, Vietnamese being very interesting and very creative, they have created some really nice ways of drinking coffee. So Lydia will tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I actually didn't visit Vietnam. I visited Laos, that has very similar coffee culture to Vietnam, and also similar coffee cocktails. They create in Vietnam and surrounding countries. They use Robusta being a very intense coffee taste. They use it for different coffee cocktails, and they like to mix it with ice, milk, and condensed milk. So what you can see on the picture, because condensed milk is quite heavy, you can see it at the bottom of the glass. It also creates nice color contrast, and they call it cafe suada. Another alternative that also is drank, and we tried that 2 days ago at home, is coffee with raw egg yolk and also condensed milk again, that is whipped together and placed on the top of the coffee. I mean, if you have a sweet tooth, then you would probably like it. I didn't enjoy it that much, but that's yeah.
Ew, indeed.
It's an interesting take on coffee.
The thing is, it's raw eggs. So some people, unless you want to really try something new, and you're gonna risk salmonella, then you can try it. But then again, in Vietnam, they have very nice cocktails. They have like yogurt coffee, so-called yogurt coffee, which is basically yogurt coffee and surprise condensed milk, and something that is more to my palate, but it's more like a smoothie. So they take one shot of coffee, of espresso coffee, and then they add it to a smoothie of banana and avocado. And this is actually really delicious, really powerful and really refreshing. But the thing is, I'm happy that I'm mentioning this, because this is how we're going to kind of wrap up everything about Vietnam. Next month, we're going to have this edition, because we have this edition every month. And we're going to talk about fresh cocktails made of coffee, because now it's the beginning of summer. And I think we're going to make for you and give you, of course, the recipes for some really, really interesting coffee cocktails. So stay tuned. Next month, we're going to discuss that.
Cool. At the end, we'll also show you how you can get in touch with us in case you want to follow the schedule of the events. But before I actually go into your questions and answers, that I would like to tell you a story of this week when I had a call with my sister, and she was complaining to me that basically now, because of working from home and having a remote team, it's really difficult to create the right team spirit, because you can't meet your colleagues anymore in a coffee room where you used to meet. And her colleagues were coming up with ideas for team building happening online that were, let's say, not that perfect. And I told her that why not to make something what is, connecting people in the office. Everybody drinks coffee or tea, but not a lot of people know about these things. So I came up with the idea and launched the online team building for remote teams, where you can put your senses into test. So we'll do some funny tasting exercises of very basic tastes like sweet, sour, bitter, yeah, with ingredients that you can find at home in your fridge. And the second part would be around preparing a coffee or tea cocktail, so the tea drinkers don't feel excluded from the group. And we would conclude the team building with a really funny exercise where we ask who drinks most of espressos, and what it reveals about your personality, because a lot of habits that we do every day based on our coffee choices actually means something for our personality as well. So that's the end of the commercial break.
Yeah, but we have to say that at the end, I'm happy that we have these people on this meeting, because right now, absolutely for free, what are we going to do?
Yes, I forget that. I forgot what we're giving you. So we want to offer you an opportunity to people who actually are at this event. if you're interested to do a team building that entitles the coffee experience, you can reach out to us. I'll put on the slide where you can find our contact details, and we would like to offer it to your team for free. So,
because it's a new product, we already did it, and we like the experience, and we think it's going to be great. It's not going to take more than an hour, and your team will be better afterwards.
So yeah, that's the
end of the commercial break.
And now let's have a look at the questions. So there is a question from Saleh. I'm just gonna move this a little bit so I can read it. About the processing of coffee in Colombia, I see lately more natural coffee coming. Do you think that more farmers are attempting to explore? So not sure if Alejo, you would know how to answer this, but by natural coffee, you probably mean the coffee that is not well,
pesticides, I think. Yeah.
Ah, right. So ecological.
More like specialty coffee, kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that they are using a lot of. When we visited the farms, I saw that they were using a lot of pesticides that were natural, you know, like basically from the nature. They're also using banana trees that are complementary to coffee plant, and they exchange vitamins and
minerals
and water.
And water, yeah.
So definitely, and I think that in Colombia, you know, that there is a huge push from the government as well to focus on coffee, because it's a country obviously that has some history, well, dark history connected to drugs, and they are trying to convert a lot of farms that used to grow cocaine to coca plant, basically.
What he just saying, he meant dried, not washed. So he meant the process, the natural process.
Right.
So yes, I've tried natural Colombia, but I think my favorite ones are washed Colombian coffees. Personally.
Yeah, I think that the problem with dried Colombian is because it's so humid. You actually need quite dry weather to create the right dried coffee. Otherwise, it gets moldy, and due to huge humidity in Colombia, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So I think that there could be some regions where they try that, but most of the time they don't have conditions for that. That's right. That's why coffee is predominantly washed.
Yep. Any more questions, guys?
You can post them also to the chat. It's fine if you.
It's easier also.
Yeah. If you'd like to do that. And okay.
Hey guys, just one thing to add is that I do see more roasters who are working directly with farmers in Colombia. So these roasters, because they're connected to the customers here in Europe, they know what type of new things they like to try. So I do know about, I think Nomad here in Barcelona. They have direct connections to the farmers in Colombia, and they're trying to experiment with some new methods. So I guess it's not mainstream, but there's definitely some farmers trying new things that have their customers in Europe. Yeah.
All right. Next question is, in which country we have drunk the best coffee? We have drunk the best coffee in Spain, meaning we were here when we drank it. But I don't know. Honestly, I have a favorite coffee, guys. And it came from, I remember it very vividly, like it was like now that I drank it. It came from Yemen. So that was my favorite coffee until now. But of course, my palate changed a lot. So maybe I should try.
I really don't have favorite coffee, because I'm that kind of person that like to experiment. So if I drink something what I do not expect in my cup of coffee, I would probably enjoy it, you know.
Yeah.
So that's difficult to say, but I enjoyed experience in Ethiopia, because being a part of the ceremony, coffee ceremony with local people, was really interesting. So it was not only about the coffee, about the taste of coffee, but it was actually all around it.
Yeah.
Cool. So
I think this is it.
If you don't have any questions, then thank you for your active participation. Thank you for being with us. It was really nice. I was trying to read your comments as well during the event, and it's really nice, you know, to be with people who have the same interest. So feel free to reach out. We have a website as well. If you don't follow us on social media, we have Facebook, Instagram as well. So please get in touch, and we hope to see you next time when we are doing a little bit more practical event, preparing the cocktails.
That would be really interesting. Yeah.
And if you have 2 more minutes, please go to slido.com, and there is a short survey where we are asking if you like the event and what would you improve, etc. It's obviously very valuable to us because we're just starting with these events, and you know, we're doing them for you. So hopefully you are enjoying them, and if you have any suggestions, feel free to write them down.
Yep. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks a lot, and have a nice weekend.